You've interviewed some of the most remarkable people in the world. I'd like to ask you if there's one or two things that have really impacted your thinking.
I definitely think about a lot of the incredible experts we've had on sleep. The reason I bring up sleep is because I think it's the one habit that incredibly impacts every other habit. When you get a good night's sleep, you're less likely to eat foods that are bad for you. Mm-hmm. You're more likely to have the energy to work out. You're going to feel more motivated and focused at work. It's the domino effect. And so for me, the things I've learned about sleep, the first is
you're a great lesson in the languages of love. Yes. And acknowledging that we all love different ways and we receive love differently. You all kind of ask of what language does Radhi speak and show love, or what language does Jay speak, and then how can I show them love in my language? And I just think that's such a beautiful, beautiful thing. And laughter. I love that, you all are, the laughter that you continue to bring. And I know that in our relationship, that laughter is foundational.
If you don't laugh, you'll cry.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, especially, when I first met Arndrea, she was serious as the Board of Health.
Serious as the Board of Health?
Serious
as the Board of Health.
That's pretty serious.
That's pretty serious.
We say serious. Arndrea, when she was 20-ish, like I said, she was like really serious. I don't know if I saw that, but all of a sudden, over the last 5 years, she has become one of the most funny people that I know, one of the most funniest persons, and it just adds so much to our lives. And people don't know my dad was humorous. Got that from his mother. They see him as very serious, which he always was publicly, but he also was extraordinarily humorous.
Radhi's the comedian in our relationship.
That was going to be my question. Is that what are some things that she does to make you laugh?
Oh my God, Radhi is the kind of person that wakes up in the morning, does a random dance move just for fun. I walk into the kitchen. There's no music playing. But Radhi's having a full-on party just in her head. Yeah, and it's so much fun to watch. And just someone who's always looking at the bright side of life. Someone who's always. It's just so 99.9% of the time.
You're painting me out to be. I'm like, I can be a lot as well. Okay.
No, you can't.
I can.
You're not a lot. She's hilarious in every possible way. She's making funny jokes. Everyone knows. Anyone who follows Radhi on social media knows that she's hilarious. And my team finds it really funny because on Valentine's Day or on our anniversary or whatever, I'll write these long, soppy, romantic, heartfelt messages because that's who I am. And Radhi will post an AI video of me twerking, and I'm not joking. It's real. I would never.
Can we share that on social media? Is that available? We're gonna put that on My Legacy podcast.
It's on Valentine's Day.
Okay,
I was literally, I wrote this beautiful post, and she's got a video of me AI twerking.
You're a PDA person.
Yeah.
I struggle with that.
I love the description in this image in the morning, you walking in, dancing into the morning kitchen. So I'm the type of guy who rolls out of bed and you got to drag me into the kitchen. I never loved cooking. So I got to be candid here. Radhi, in your book, Joyful, you focus on conscious cooking and the energy that we bring into our food. As someone who sees cooking as a chore, how can we turn that into much more of a joyful practice?
Well, to be fair, the morning thing, I am a morning person. I always have been. My mom has trained me to always wake up early. Didn't like it when I was younger, but really appreciate it now because mornings are definitely my favorite time of day. So I think that's at my advantage. I definitely jump out of bed and I'm ready to go from the second I'm awake. But how do I... The question was, how do I...
Make cooking a joyful practice. It's so core to you.
Because I think... After learning about Ayurveda and also, again, watching my mum and my grandma cook throughout my whole life, I realized that it is so much more than just fuel for the body. It is such an act of service. And through that act, you can share so much love in it. Whenever you think about, I deeply believe that the reason most of us feel if our parents used to cook for us, that something tasted so good and you feel that warmth and that love through the food that someone's cooked for you, there is an actual energetic force that goes into the food that you're cooking when you're cooking it. And even in Ayurveda, it talks about how the energy that you have when you're touching the food, when you're cooking the food, when you're preparing the food, how you are feeling, the thoughts you're thinking, the energy that you have, the emotion that you're feeling has the ability to be transferred into the food that you are creating for that person. And so when I learned that, I was like, that is phenomenal, because you can literally heal someone's heart through cooking. You can bring someone happiness through thinking about joyful things or praying while cooking the meal. You can transform not just their body, but their mood, their energy levels, their heart, their mental state. And so it became so much more than just being in the kitchen for me. It became an act of love and service and healing for people that I love and wanted to care for. And so, yeah, it really shifted my perspective of what cooking actually is. Like, it's not just cooking. It's so much deeper than that.
You have just shifted my perspective. Sincerely, I love that. I love the idea.
I do that. I don't know if you realize this, Martin, but at when I'm cooking, I change. There's always music playing in our house.
Yeah.
Normally during the day, it can be anything from singing bowls to, jazz music to a lot of classical. And whenever I start cooking, I'll put on the James Ingram or Jeffrey Osborne station. I don't know if you know, the energy in the house shifts. And I always pray as I'm cooking. I do that I never even told you and Yolanda this, that as I'm cooking, I'm praying as I'm cooking. So I love that.
I want to monitor that a little closer.
But what a beautiful practice, something so intentional that we can do in our own lives. I love that, to channel our energy through our food to loved ones.
And the passion of Ayurveda just makes it so much more special as well.
Ayurveda basically just separates just how we have, I guess, like our genes or, personality types. In Ayurveda, it categorizes people into doshas, and it's basically a mixture of the elements that are within our body that create our personality, our physical features, our emotional balance during the day. Basically, every part of our life we kind of navigate through these different elements. And so some people have more of one element than another, and therefore you fit into different categories according to that. And it's actually really useful, because when I understood that Jay was a pitta, which means fire and water, if you think about what fire is hot in nature. It eats everything up. It is like, it's sharp and creates a lot of energy in the room. And so that also means, so for example, for someone's digestion who is pitta, it means you need to be eating regularly. You have to, you digest things very fast, which means that you need deep, like fulfilling nourishment in you to be able to work at the pace that your mind works at. I also know when imbalanced, if you think about fire, it can lead to some sort of like agitation or sharpness. And so you then learn the qualities of the person that you spend the most amount of time with and understand what's required to balance that person out. So whether it's making sure his meals are there on time for himself, or understanding that his digestion, the types of foods that he needs to eat, need to balance and be cooling to counteract the fiery nature. So it sounds a bit more complicated than it is, but it's actually quite simple once you start to read about it and understand it, and can really help to navigate the foods you eat, the environment that you're in, the workouts that you do, the things that you put on your skin. Literally every part of your life can be adjusted according to your dosha.
So then, Radhi, is that another way that you all speak each other's love languages? Like, do you use Ayurvedic principles in some ways? Like, that, okay, so he's, I need to.
In a subtle way, yeah. Like, I know the foods that he should and shouldn't be eating. So if I notice that he's in like a really intense period of his work, or he's really, he's like, not burning out, but he's doing a lot of things, I know the types of foods that he probably should be eating to help balance that out. And in the same way, I think I also know that if he doesn't eat and he might be a little bit, hangry, I understand where that comes from.
I was about to say that I don't know Ayurveda, but I know when you're hungry.
Yeah, exactly. You do. And you also know, like, kaphas can tend to be really emotional, and I tend to be quite emotional. And vatas have vata is air, which means my mind can switch from one thing to another. And it was really interesting when we first met. And actually through our relationship, one thing that we've struggled with is he'll be telling a story or telling me something really meaningful, and my mind can switch from one thing to another quite fast. And so he's saying something, it's triggered something else in my mind, and I'm off topic onto something else. And he's barely finished saying what he's thinking of or finished talking about the topic he's on. And so I had to really explain that to him, that it's not that I'm not listening, it's that my mind is connecting more dots than most people's does. And so my mind will connect things in a way that other people's won't. And so I've had to learn to figure that out, but he's also learned to give me a bit of grace with it too. So it has stopped a few arguments once we figured that out.
Using Ayurveda as an excuse.
I know. There you go.
There you go. It's a marriage counselor as well. Who knew? So Jay, what would you say, because Radhi has obviously inspired so many people with her books and her, cooking and health, what would be one habit that she inspired, one bad, if you would say, habit that she inspired you to change?
Oh yeah, it would definitely be my sugar intake. and I think this is a really important one for everyone, because I think people just don't understand the dangers of sugar and how much of it we're consuming. And especially in America, where I feel like so much of our food is just naturally filled with it, and how much of our diets have become infiltrated with packaged foods. Most of the things we're eating are not natural whole foods. And so I would say my diet as a whole has been completely reorganized and reshifted through Radhi, and it's actually it's a redefining of taste buds. Like, it's not even like, now it's not like, oh my gosh, I'm craving this and I can't have it. It's almost like recognizing that our taste buds are so badly programmed because of what we've been conditioned to eat for so long. And so we think we need it more than we do. So I think I definitely still have a sweet tooth, and I love a chocolate fudge cake if I can get one. But definitely made me much healthier in my diet. And yeah, that would easily be the biggest one.
Radhi, if someone wanted to change their overall wellness and energy, what one or two things could they do?
Honestly, I'd say in this day and age, one of the biggest things to change is, I always think of the 80-20 rule, but in this case, I mean that 80% of the food not coming from a packet and 20% of the food coming from a packet. Like, if you can make sure that the balance is that way, because for a lot of people, the balance is actually the other way. It's 80% coming from a packet and 20% coming from whole foods. And so I think that is causing a lot of the rise in a lot of health issues. So that's one. And I think the second thing would be, I've noticed that the fall in the amount of people that want to cook at home. And most of us are eating foods from restaurants or takeaways. And actually, we don't know the oils that people are using. We don't know the ingredients. We are really unaware of the consciousness that people are cooking it with. And so the second part to that would be, try and cook more meals at home. Like, connect to your food, understand what's going into it, and like, read the labels, start to educate yourself. I think we've put so much of our health into other people's hands. And I think it's really difficult nowadays, because there is way too much information online. Everybody's telling you should or shouldn't eat this. But in Ayurveda, I just learned how important it is to start to listen to your body. Most of us are so disconnected to our body that we don't even notice when we're having digestive issues. We don't realize that when I'm eating this, it's actually causing joint pain. When I'm eating this, it's making me feel lethargic and not energized. Like, the bottom line is, anything that we eat or drink, it should be creating vitality, energy, and lightness in the body. Like, you should feel like you can still get up and do things. As soon as you're eating foods and it's making you lethargic, it's making you feel heavy, and it's draining energy from you, that's a sign that the food that you're eating may just not be right for you. And so the third part of that would be education. Don't leave it to other people to tell you what you should be doing for your body. Start to learn. And the best way of doing that to start off with is start listening. When I'm eating this, how am I feeling? When I'm eating this, how is my digestion? How is my mind? Am I feeling focused and clear, or am I feeling foggy? There are such simple questions we can ask ourselves to really start to tune into the ins and outs of what we're eating and how it's affecting us. So I would say less packaged foods, cooking more meals at home, and educating yourself, because your health is in your hands. It shouldn't be in someone else's hands.
Jay, we're so excited that you're about to take your podcast On Purpose on the road, where people can see you live with, of course, some surprise guests as well. And what comes to mind is over the years, you've interviewed some of the most remarkable people in the world and gained their insight and wisdom on issues about happiness and living a fulfilled life. I'd like to ask you if there's one or two things from one of your guests or multiple guests that have really impacted your thinking in those areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I feel so grateful that I get to, after 6 years of building this incredible community, I get to go on tour and meet those people and hold those hands and give them hugs and look into their eyes and thank them for listening to us. You know, the hundreds of millions of people who've been doing that every single week for 6 years now. It's really, really exciting. So we're starting with North America. When I think about my guests, I definitely think about a lot of the incredible experts we've had on sleep. And the reason I bring up sleep is because I think it's the one habit that incredibly impacts every other habit. When you get a good night's sleep, you're less likely to eat foods that are bad for you. Mm-hmm. You're more likely to have the energy to work out. You're going to feel more motivated and focused at work. It's the domino effect. And what I've learned about sleep is that a lot of us are not trying to build up our sleep like we build up other parts of our life. We want to gain mastery at our careers. We want to get good at our relationships. But so much of that is based on the quality of our sleep. If you have slept well, you're less irritable. You're less agitated. You're less likely to get angry or frustrated when something doesn't go your way because you have that foundational calm. And so for me, the things I've learned about sleep, the first is set a bedtime routine. Try and sleep at the same time every single day. Mm-hmm. Again, at least 5 days a week. Second is try and sleep in what's known as cave-like darkness. A lot of us today have flashing lights from TVs, from remote controls, from our phones, whatever it may be. Try and sleep in cave-like darkness as best as you can. Try and sleep in a temperature that's 63 to 68, 69 Fahrenheit. That's the recommended temperature. Slightly cooler. We actually sleep better when it's a little bit cooler than what we think. And the last one is have a bedtime routine. You know, eat a few hours before you get into before you're going to go to bed. Stop looking at your phone an hour before bed. Really create that energy to be able to switch off. And so sleep has been something I've focused on with a lot of my amazing guests, and the fulfillment and sleep can give so much fulfillment and peace in life. I think it would change so much of our day. And the other one I'd say that has really moved me is a lot of the advice that I've received on people talking about childhood trauma and the need to revisit our inner child. I think what we don't realize is so much of what we see today is not someone's adult self, but their child self stuck in their adult body. And so when you're looking at someone, if you were to look at them as a child, you could actually understand why they say the things they do, and why they demand the things they want, and why they behave the way they do, and why they act the way they do, because it's their child self. And I think if all of us were able to look at not just other people that way, but look at ourselves that way, and look at our child self and say, where have I not fulfilled my childhood dreams? Where have I not met my inner child? Where have I not really reconciled with that inner child? I think life would change incredibly. I think the way we talk to ourselves, I think if we talk to ourselves as if we were talking to a younger child, we would transform the hate and the harshness and the pain that we inflict on ourselves just through the self-criticism and the self-judgment and the self-harsh talk that we have in our mind constantly, from the moment we wake up and we look in the mirror and comment on our weight, to the moment we go to work and comment on our intellect, and the moment we get home and comment on our effort and enthusiasm. We're constantly criticizing ourselves. And so I think the need to see each other as children, see ourselves as children, makes such a big difference and would hugely transform the planet we live on. And there's a beautiful quote by Russell Barkley that I love, where he said that the people who need the most love often ask for it in the most unloving ways. And I think that's what we are. The child self in us, we're not asking for love in adult ways. We're asking for love in childlike ways. And if we can heal that and recognize that in ourselves and the people around us, then we have the opportunity to truly have maturity which is what I think we're all so deeply looking for and seeking. So those are the couple of things that come to mind from the podcast.
We have a book
Wow.
called What Is My Legacy?
Yeah.
They lovingly
yes,
contributed
of
to the
course,
book,
yes.
and we were so
So
grateful.
we're all authors of that book, and one of the things that we talk about is the importance of your inner child, and one of the things that that I talk about in my portion of the book is that I have a lot of them around a childhood picture of myself in a frame next to my bed. So that's one of the first things that I see in the morning and last things at night. And we also talk to people and even encourage them to even put as your screensaver a little version of yourself as your screensaver to constantly reinforce and seeing that little person of you and connecting with that inner child.
Jay and Radhi, just thank you guys so much for contributing to What Is My Legacy. We're very grateful. And one of the things that really stood out based on this conversation is not just how trauma is within us, especially childhood trauma, but also through epigenetics. Trauma can be passed down from generation to generation to generation. Do you have any insights on that topic?
I personally think that it's something we have to reflect on, and a simple way I like to reflect on it is something I call the gifts and the gaps. And so I believe there are certain gifts we got from our parents, and we now expect others to give us those same gifts. And there are certain gaps that our parents left, and we now want others to fill those gaps.
Right.
And I think the key in both of those scenarios is learning to give yourself those gifts and fill those gaps yourself. And so I think that's a very simple entry-level way into this topical conversation that can be really big, really scary, really challenging, which ideally you do with a therapist and someone who's trained to guide you through that journey. But for those who are moving into that space themselves, think about what habits you repeat because they're triggered from your parents, what habits you have today that maybe aren't yours but have come from something in your past. And very quickly, you'll be able to make little adjustments that can save your future from your past. And that's what I'd say to people. It's anyone who wants to save their future from their past, we have to go backwards and heal our trauma in order to move forward in a healed state. And so that requires the ability to look back and go, where did I pick that up? Why do I react like that? Where does that trigger come from? And as soon as you map it out, it's almost like this light bulb moment where you go, oh my gosh, I had no idea. And now you can actually edit your path forward. So that's the entry point, I'd say, for most people.
For those listening on social media who want to share something with loved ones, save our future from our past. That's something to share to their friends. I love that phrase.
Radhi, you've also had some amazing people on your podcast, and thank you so much for what you do and sharing such wisdom. Is there a guest or two or a word of wisdom you can share from what's been shared with you for our listeners?
I would say the people that have recently stood out to me, one was, Terry Cole, actually. She talked a lot about the way that we connect in relationships. And, it was a very enlightening moment when she was talking about how we can help the people that we love. And, I think we have this habit of wanting to save people in our life when they're struggling, save people in our life when they are going through low moments. And that's one thing, actually, it reminds me of when I was struggling with things and Jay could have saved me, and instead he chose to give me aid in that area. He didn't choose to fix it for me. He would help me fix it for myself. And she spoke about that so deeply, saying most of the time we're trying to play savior to make ourselves feel less uncomfortable. But actually, you are disempowering them by fixing it for them. You are not giving them the tools and techniques to be able to do that for themselves ever again. Instead, you're being the savior, taking the power away from them. And I found that so fascinating. I thought that was that was a topic that I had to digest a lot, because I always struggle when people around me or family or anyone is struggling. I struggle not to intervene and try and fix the situation because I feel uncomfortable that they're going through it. But I realize it's so much more about giving people the tools and techniques rather than stepping in to play savior.
That's a big one, not only in romantic relationships, that's a big one in parenting. Like when to know when that they need that struggle in order to garner that that muscle, and when to, you know, kind of stepping back and not being the instant savior, even for our children.
Yes, exactly.
So
another one that was amazing actually was Mindy Pell. She shares a lot about female hormones and the way a woman should be living according to her cycle rather than living according to a 24-hour cycle.
Yes, because we should a man's cycle versus the.
And I thought that's something I think a lot of women could really use, because hormonal issues are really going up in women especially, and I think learning about our hormone cycle can really help us to avoid the future problems that women go through, whether it's difficulty through menopause, whether it's difficulty conceiving. All of that is based on our hormones. And so that was another one that I really learned so much from.
For the men at the table,
yes,
we are taught we are taught on to do things on a 24-hour cycle.
Yes.
Which is a male cycle. But we as women, we have a 28-day cycle. And so it's really now this big movement of women reconnecting to doing things, being in the flow, acknowledging that our cycle is longer than the way that we're taught, which is just 24 hours. Okay, the men are nodding their head. Look, we obviously have laughed a lot today. Together, and that's wonderful, and it's so important. We have to be very transparent that right now it's very difficult for so many people, and so many people feel such an overwhelming fear, disconnection, and so I would really am curious to hear from both of you. What would you offer to people that are feeling that fear, that disconnection, the overwhelm, the stress?
Good question. Do you want to go? The first thing that came to mind for me is whenever I feel like things are out of my control, or I feel like overwhelmed at what's happening around me, or even in our own life. There's this, every time I feel like it's just me, the problem feels really difficult to handle. But as soon as I think the problem is me plus God, or me plus the universe, or something that has a much higher power than I do, it starts to feel a little bit more manageable. And so I find that prayer for me has always been such a beautiful place to come to when all other hope feels lost. I think I get a lot of solace in prayer. And I think that also connects to the idea that we can feel way more disconnected when we don't feel connected to ourselves. And so whether it's practices and rituals to actually connect deeper to ourselves, that allows us to connect deeper to other people and have meaningful connections with others that help us through those times. I think reconnecting every single day in some way to who you are and having those moments are really important to be able to connect to someone else, to be able to feel understood or valued by other people. And I think for me, the main one always ends up being prayer, because I'm like, at this point, I can't control anything, so I'm leaving it up to you. But I would love to hear some of yours.
There's something called the third space theory, and it's this idea that just around 25, 50 years ago, we had three spaces we lived in. We had home, we had work, and then we had church or temple, synagogue, mosque. And what happened is that those three spaces shrunk to two spaces. We went from work to home and home to work. And now we all know that those two places have shrunk into one place.
Yeah.
We work from home and we live at home. And what's happened is not that we've just lost three spaces, but we've lost what that third space provided us. So what happened at church or the community center or a place of gathering was you had a space to look back on work and home and state and everything else and reflect on, how could I be better? What could I do differently? Let's figure out together what the solution is. What can we all band to do together? So the biggest challenge today is that we're all feeling the same feeling, but we're feeling it on our own. We're lonely, feeling the same thing. And there's a big difference between being lonely, feeling something, and feeling belonging in feeling something. Wow. And so what I would encourage everyone to do is go and find your third space. Go and find your space of belonging. Go and find your space of connection. Go and find that space where you're with people of equal value, where you can share your heart, when you can hear other people's, when you can open up your mind, where you can carry someone else's burden. I think we've just lost that as a society. And I think these moments are great reminders that we are stronger when we are working together. We are better when we're working together. And ultimately, when we're united and carrying each other's weight, the weight doesn't feel as large. And I think that's the biggest challenge today, is that we're all carrying the weight on our own. And so finding that third space, creating that third space if you don't have it. The third space doesn't have to be 200 people, 2,000 people, 20,000 people. It can literally be 4 people in a room that are reading scripture together, that are starting a book club, that are listening to this podcast and sharing what they learned from you and all your amazing guests that you've had on. It starts that small, and I really feel that we have to create that third space, even because right now our third space is all of us sitting in front of the television. And the TV screen is the third space. The phone screen is the third space. And that third space isn't giving you what the original third space gave you.
Oh, I love it. You know, both of you give this incredible, powerful message into the world, into this universe. You've dedicated your lives to service and to inspiration. Of course, on My Legacy, we reflect on legacy. And ultimately, what do you hope each of you, your legacy, will be?
It's really interesting. When I think about legacy, I think about things that are timeless and things that will last forever. And if I'm completely honest, I don't think anything I've done or said or created will last forever. I'm really grateful I got to be a tiny voice in the 5,000-year-old history of the Vedic tradition, which has come before me and will outlast me for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And so the legacy is the ancient wisdom that is actually timeless wisdom. It's not ancient because it's as relevant today as it was 5,000 years ago. And the fact that those spiritual texts, I've been able to share those in my books and quote them in my writing and my videos and my work, I feel grateful I got connected. So the legacy is really for those texts to live on, which would live on with or without me. And so I'm not too concerned about my personal legacy because the texts will do the work that they need to do, and those words will have the impact that they're meant to have with or without me. I just got lucky to be a small part of that journey.
Yeah, I think mine might be along the same lines of it. You know, I remember when I started sharing anything that I was learning online, I would really struggle because I didn't feel qualified to do it. And I remember one of our teachers, Radhanath Swami, would always talk about being a bridge, where you don't have to be the expert, you don't have to be the end point, but you can be a bridge for someone where you're helping them go from one thing to another and then passing them on to somebody else. And I really loved that, and it really helped me to feel qualified to some degree to be able to do that for people. And I actually think when I reflect on my life, what legacy I carry of my grandma or my mum or my dad or anybody that's been before me, it is the knowledge that they've imparted in me, whether it's through the food that I make, whether it's through the way that I interact with people after having watched the way that my dad interacts with them, whether it's the spice knowledge that my grandma has taught me about how to heal my body through it. It's like that information is the legacy, because every single thing material can become invaluable so easily. And so I think for me, yeah, it's being able to share all those little moments of teachings that you've had in your life and passing that down or to other people in hopes that they're able to nourish their lives with it and then also pass that to other people. If that makes sense. Yeah.
How beautiful that we started with your grandmother and that we ended with your grandmother.
Yeah.
Jay and Radhi, thank you for sharing your wisdom, your love with each other in that beautiful, authentic way. The extraordinary challenges that you've laid in front of us of how we can all, our listeners and our viewers, do small but deeply intentional things every day in our lives. And I want to relay some of those challenges again for the message that your partner is your guru. What a beautiful thing for our listeners to say to their loved ones, their partners, after they listen to this, that you are my guru, you are the teacher, you help me be better. To say that intentionally to someone. And then I also love the small but powerful idea of, while we're cooking, to infuse the love, to say a little prayer. Arndrea, your music, a little bit of love. Jay and Radhi, thank you for living your legacies every single day and reminding us that purpose isn't something we find, it's something we create in our lives.
Oh,
Thank you so
We're so
much.
grateful to all of you for creating what felt like such a beautiful, safe space, even though we're connected virtually. It speaks
So
to all of your
true.
energies. It just felt like we were all in the same room. And so thank you so much.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, subscribe and share the podcast with friends, family, and loved ones, and follow us on social media at My Legacy Movement. At the heart of this podcast is Dr. King's vision of the beloved community and the power of connection. This podcast is a testament to that vision and the product of collective effort, enriched by the voices, stories, and support of so many. My Legacy Podcast is available on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.